AITA for not paying my ex's debt after she dumped me for her true love. My name is Javier, and I'm 29 years old. I own a small burger joint. It's not a fancy place or anything like that, but it means the world to me. Everything I have, I've achieved through hard work. I started by working in other people's kitchens, putting in long hours, and saving every dollar I could. After many years of sacrifice, I managed to open my own business. Over time, the restaurant began to grow. More and more customers came, and some became regulars. Little by little, I became well known in the area. I can say that today, I make a living from something I truly enjoy. Thanks to my work, I was able to buy a car and my own house. It's not a mansion or anything impressive, but it's a comfortable 2-bedroom bungalow, and it's enough for me. I've never been someone who seeks luxury. I'm more of a hardworking person who feels happy seeing their effort pay off. It was at exactly that stage of my life, when everything seemed to be going well, that I met Amelia. She was 25 years old at the time. I wasn't looking for a serious relationship because I was very focused on my business, but sometimes life surprises you. I clearly remember the day she first walked into the restaurant. It was a Friday evening, and the place was packed with customers. I was helping at the counter because we were short-staffed when she came in. She ordered her food with a shy smile. I don't know exactly what it was, but something in her eyes caught my attention. In the middle of our brief conversation, she asked if the restaurant was mine. When I said yes, she was surprised and congratulated me on the business. We ended up talking for a few minutes longer than usual. After that, we started seeing each other. At first, everything was excitement and novelty. I felt those butterflies in my stomach that you get when you're starting a relationship. Amelia was affectionate, very attentive to me, and always found a way to make me feel special. As the months went by, the relationship became more serious, and we finally became a couple. However, over time I started to notice some things about her personality. Amelia was quite jealous and sometimes very emotionally unstable. If she saw me talking to a female customer, even when I was just working, she would get upset. If someone commented on my social media, she wanted to know who it was and why they were writing to me. At first, I didn't give it much importance. I thought that jealousy was her way of showing how much she cared about our relationship. I was in love, and instead of setting boundaries, I chose to put up with it. Over time, those attitudes became more frequent. We argued over small or unimportant things. There were times when she was calm and affectionate, but suddenly her mood would change for no clear reason. Some days she told me I was the most important thing in her life. At other times, she seemed to doubt everything. I tried to justify these changes by thinking that maybe she had insecurities or had gone through difficult experiences before meeting me. My mistake was believing that love was enough to fix any problem. The truth is, I was deeply in love. I believed our relationship had a future. I thought we could overcome any difficulty together. I even imagined marrying her someday and starting a family. I always included her in my plans and was convinced she felt the same way. But a few months ago, everything started to change. Amelia began to behave differently. She seemed more distant, more distracted, as if her mind was somewhere else. When I asked her what was wrong, she would say she was tired or dealing with personal problems. I tried not to pressure her, but her coldness began to affect me. Arguments became more frequent, and awkward silences became part of our routine. I'm not a suspicious person, but something inside me started to suspect something was wrong. It was a feeling that was hard to explain, as if I knew there was something she wasn't telling me. One day, something happened that left me thinking. Amelia was in the bathroom, and her cell phone buzzed on the coffee table. I never check anyone's phone, but the screen lit up and a notification popped up from an unsaved number. The message said, "See you tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about you." I felt a punch to my stomach. My first reaction was to think it was maybe a mistake or a joke from a friend, but deep down, I had the feeling it wasn't. At that moment, I decided not to say anything. The next day, I woke up early and made a decision I'm not proud of, but I needed to know the truth. I decided to follow her. She told me she was going to visit a friend from her old job, but instead of going there, I saw her pull into the parking lot of a coffee shop. I parked my car at a distance and watched from afar. A few minutes later, a man arrived. At first, I didn't recognize him, but then I remembered Amelia had told me about her ex, Dylan. They greeted each other with an embrace that lasted a little too long and started talking as if they were a couple. At that moment, I felt everything crumbling inside me. I still wanted to believe I was wrong, but what I was seeing right in front of me confirmed my worst fear. Amelia was cheating on me. I didn't approach them or make a scene. I just stared in silence with a mix of anger, sadness, and disappointment. After a few minutes, I drove away. I didn't have the strength to stay or confront her at that moment. That same night, when she returned to my house, I decided to talk to her. I sat across from Amelia and told her directly that I knew what was going on. At first, she denied it, but when she saw I was certain, she lowered her gaze. What she said next destroyed me even more. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that yes, she had been seeing her ex, but she also told me something I'll never forget, that he was the true love of her life, and that although she cared for me, she had never stopped loving him. Hearing that was like a stab to the heart. Until that day, I believed our relationship had a future and that everything could be fixed, but suddenly I understood something very painful. To her, I had just been a replacement, a kind of safe harbor while she remained emotionally tied to someone else. At that moment, I didn't know what to say. I just looked at her in silence while trying to hold back my tears. She asked me to try to understand her. She said she hadn't planned it, that she had simply started feeling things again for someone she, according to her, had never been able to forget. I was devastated. Everything we had built over 3 years seemed to fall apart in the most painful way possible. At that moment, I understood something that was hard for me to accept. Love alone is useless if there is no honesty or respect. But what happened next was even worse. To better understand the situation, I must say something important. During our relationship, I was always the one who covered the big expenses. It never bothered me to do so because helping the person I love is my way of showing affection. The problem is that over time, Amelia got used to depending on me for almost everything. I paid for our rent, utilities, groceries, the weekend getaways we took from time to time, and even debts she had before meeting me. Among those debts was the loan for the car she drove. When we started dating, she told me she had bought a used Honda Civic with a car loan, but was having trouble making the monthly payments. At that time, my restaurant was already doing quite well, so I thought I could give her a hand without a problem. So, I started paying the monthly car note myself. In my head, it was simply a gesture of support toward my partner, something natural when you love someone. I never imagined that later on, that would end up being used against me. A few weeks after we broke up, I was at the restaurant reviewing the business accounts when my cell phone started ringing. It was Amelia. For a moment, I hesitated to answer. I thought maybe she wanted to arrange a time to pick up the rest of her things. I finally answered. "Hello, Javier," she said in a completely normal tone, as if nothing had happened. "What do you want, Amelia?" I replied, not wanting to drag out the conversation. "I was just calling to remind you that I got a notice that you haven't paid the car note yet. You should do it soon, because otherwise, they'll start adding late fees." I stayed silent for a few seconds, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Are you joking?" I finally said, letting out a nervous laugh. "No, I'm serious. You know you always took care of that payment." At that moment, I felt my blood boil. "Listen to me closely, Amelia," I told her. "You and I are done. You lied to me, you cheated on me, and on top of that, you had the nerve to tell me your ex is the love of your life. I have no reason to keep paying your debts. That car is yours, not mine. Figure it out on your own." After that, there was an awkward silence. I hung up. I thought everything would end there, but I was very wrong. In the following days, she started calling and texting me nonstop. She said I had to be a man and couldn't just walk away from a responsibility I had already taken on. I blocked her number, but she always found another way to contact me, even using different apps and spoofed numbers. I tried to ignore her as much as possible, but the situation got worse when someone else showed up. Her ex, that same guy she had cheated on me with. One day I saw a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer at first, but he insisted so many times that I finally decided to pick up to end the matter. "Javier," a male voice said. "Yes. Who is this?" "I'm Dylan, Amelia's partner." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This guy, who, as Amelia had told me, still lived with his parents and had never held a steady job, now had the nerve to call me. "And what do you want?" I asked him. "Look, I'm not looking for trouble," he said in a tone that sounded mocking. "I just want you to understand that it's only fair that you keep helping Amelia. She gave you 3 years of her life. 3 years of her youth that she's not getting back. I froze. Excuse me. I replied in disbelief. Yeah, you heard me. The least you can do is cover at least a year of her rent and finish paying what's left on the car. That's nothing for you. You have a restaurant that brings in good money. At that moment, I exploded. Listen to me carefully, you moocher, I told him. During those 3 years, I gave her absolutely everything. Stability, support, a roof over her head, and I even paid her debts. Don't come at me saying I owe her anything. If anyone failed here, it was her. He tried to interrupt me, but I didn't let him. Do you know what your problem is, Dylan? I continued. You're a leech, a parasite who still depends on his parents and has never worked for his own things. And now you have the nerve to demand that I keep providing for her while you, her great love, can't even buy her a cup of coffee. There was silence on the other end of the line. I was already completely furious. Why don't you pay for her car and her rent? I added. If you love her so much, step up and take charge. He didn't answer. Learn to earn things with your own effort. You too. I said before hanging up. The call ended there, but the harassment didn't. Amelia kept texting me over the following days. Messages like, Javier, be reasonable, don't leave me alone with this. Or if you ever truly loved me, keep your word and pay what's left. But by that point, something was very clear to me. The time had come to set a definitive boundary. It was no longer just about money. It was a matter of respect. During that relationship, I had given too much. I offered her stability, opportunities, and a life she probably wouldn't have had on her own at the time. And yet, she chose to betray me with someone who honestly wasn't even on her level. The worst part of all was that she didn't even seem ashamed. On the contrary, she expected me to keep being her savior while she built a new life with that guy. That whole situation opened my eyes all at once. I understood that sometimes people not only take advantage of your love, but also your generosity. And if you don't learn to set boundaries, you end up becoming a sort of ATM, both emotionally and financially. With every message that reached my phone, my decision grew stronger. I was not going to pay anything else. The car was her problem, the rent was her problem, and her new life with the love of her life was also her problem. I'm not perfect, but everything I have, I've achieved by working hard. No one ever came to pay my debts or solve my problems. If she wanted to be with her ex, that was fine, but she also had to take on her own responsibilities. That was how I made the decision to cut all contact. I blocked her everywhere and even set my phone to block unknown numbers. Furthermore, I spoke to my employees at the restaurant and asked them not to let her in if she ever showed up. It wasn't to humiliate her. I simply needed to protect my peace of mind and look after the business that had cost me so much effort to build. The first few days were very hard, I won't lie. I felt anger, sadness, and a huge emptiness. I had invested several years of my life in someone who ultimately just ended up using me. As time went by, I started to see everything more clearly. It still hurts to remember what happened, but now I know I made the right decision. It made no sense to keep putting money or energy into the life of someone who betrayed me and who, on top of that, wasn't even capable of leaving with a minimum amount of dignity. Update. After all that chaos, I thought that chapter of my life was already closed. I had blocked her everywhere, made my boundaries clear, and focused on moving forward with my work and my life. I thought that would be enough, but it wasn't. A couple of quiet weeks went by. Then, out of nowhere, my cell phone rang again with an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but out of habit, I ended up picking up. To my surprise, it was Amelia. Javier, please, don't hang up on me, she said between sobs. From the very first second, I was already tired of the situation. What do you want now? I replied coldly. Please, help me at least with the car. I don't want the loan to default. If we don't pay this month, they're going to charge me massive fees, and I have no way to do it. I just need you to give me some money. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. I couldn't believe she still had the nerve to ask me for money after everything that had happened between us. Amelia, I already told you before, I finally answered. That car is yours, not mine. It's your responsibility. I am not going to pay anything. Then she started crying even harder. Javier, you have to understand. I promised Dylan that you would cover everything. I told him not to worry because you had always been there. I assured him we wouldn't lack anything because you have money, because you're loaded. When I heard that, I felt my blood boil. Loaded, I said with a laugh full of sarcasm. Do you really think owning a small burger joint means I'm a millionaire? Do you have any idea how many hours I work every day to make this place run? I took a deep breath before continuing. I'm not rich, Amelia. Everything I have, I got by working hard. Nothing was handed to me, and I certainly didn't get it with empty promises. If you really want to get out of your debt, then get a job. At that moment, I heard a strange noise on the call. Suddenly, another voice took the phone. Look, you jerk, Dylan said in a threatening tone. If you don't want anything to happen to your little burger joint, you'd better cooperate. I felt a chill down my spine, but anger took over. Are you threatening me, you parasite? I replied immediately. Listen to me closely. If you touch my restaurant, you're going straight to jail. I'm not afraid of you, or anyone. My voice was completely firm. You want money? Then get a job like any decent person, because you won't see a single dime from me. And I hung up immediately. A few minutes later, the phone rang again, but this time I decided not to answer. Later, I received a voicemail from Amelia. Please, Javier, she said, crying. Help me. I can't handle this alone. It's a lot of money, and if you don't give me something, Dylan is going to leave me, and I'll be left with no one to support me. I couldn't help but let out a laugh full of irony. Deep down, she was admitting that her biggest fear wasn't the debt, but that this guy would abandon her. Her whole life plan seemed to revolve around living off someone, first me and now him. I decided to respond with sarcasm. I opened my photo gallery and looked for a video I had saved for a long time. The famous meme of Mr. Krabs playing the world's smallest violin. I sent it to her along with a message that said, "This is the official anthem for your situation. Good luck with your great love and your debts." After sending it, I felt a little relief, as if I had finally said what I needed to say. But I also knew the situation couldn't just remain a joke. Dylan had made a direct threat against my restaurant, and that was no longer something to take lightly. The next day, I went to see my lawyer. I told him everything from the beginning: the calls, the texts, the voicemail, and the threat against my business. I also showed him the call logs, screenshots, and the recording of Amelia crying and asking me for money. My lawyer was very clear. What they were doing could be considered extortion, and the threats against my business were a serious matter. I didn't think twice. I filed a formal police report and requested a restraining order. At the same time, I decided to beef up the restaurant's security. I hired a private security service for patrols, installed additional high-definition cameras, and reinforced the entrances. I also spoke with my employees to explain what was happening and asked them to stay alert. I didn't want to take any risks, neither for myself nor for the people who work with me. The irony of it all is that while I was doing everything possible to protect the business that cost me so much to build, they were probably still thinking about how to get money out of me. I say this because a few days later, I received another message from an unknown number. It was clearly written by Dylan. It said something like, "You still have time to do the right thing and support Amelia. If you don't, face the consequences." That message became yet another piece of evidence that I took straight to my lawyer. With every manipulation attempt, they were digging themselves deeper. On a personal level, I won't deny that all this affected me. It's not easy to accept that the person you trusted was capable not only of betraying you, but also of trying to take advantage of you even after ending the relationship. What shocked me the most wasn't the infidelity itself, although obviously that hurts. What really left me thinking was that mentality of dependency, that absurd idea that someone deserves to have another person pay their debts just because they were together for a while. Dylan's behavior, on the other hand, only confirmed what I already suspected: a man with no ambition, no job, and no dignity, willing to live off anyone. I felt anger, yes, but also a bit of pity, because honestly, I don't understand how someone can feel comfortable asking another man for money to support his own partner. To me, that's the lowest level of mediocrity. Today, I can say I'm not afraid. I'm legally protected, and I also tightened the restaurant's security. If they try anything, they will have to face the consequences. But beyond all that, I feel stronger than before. This experience taught me something very important. Setting boundaries isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. I learned not to confuse love with obligation. Helping someone is fine, as long as that person is also willing to do their part. What I went through with Amelia and Dylan was a bitter experience, yes, but also a necessary one to open my eyes. Sometimes I think about the contrast. While I spend my days working, thinking about how to improve my restaurant and make it grow, they are probably still looking for someone to mooch off of. That idea used to fill me with rage. Now, honestly, it brings me relief because I keep moving forward and they remain in the exact same place. The supposed love of her life turned out to be a man who can't even pay for his own coffee. And yet, she had the nerve to ask me to keep providing for her. In the end, that's the difference between someone who builds something with effort and someone who only dedicates themselves to destroying. Today, I am moving on with my life. My restaurant is stronger than before, now with better security and with customers who have shown me their support. Personally, I'm also in a different stage. I'm learning to enjoy being single and my independence. I don't know much about Amelia and Dylan. They might still be together or they might not be anymore. But there is one thing I'm absolutely sure of. They will never receive a single dime from me again. If anyone reading this could take away a lesson from my story, it would be this. Never let anyone manipulate you into taking advantage of you by using love or guilt. True love doesn't demand that you pay someone else's debts, nor does it force you to sacrifice your dignity to support someone who doesn't even try to get ahead on their own. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful I understood it now rather than later, when the cost could have been much higher. Final update. As I mentioned before, I decided to take legal action against Amelia and Dylan. The police report was filed. I increased security at the restaurant and tried to go on with my life as normally as possible. Still, there was always that slight unease. I didn't know if Dylan would actually carry out the threats he had made. The answer arrived on a night I will never forget. It was Thursday, past midnight. The restaurant was already closed, but as always, a security guard from the service I hired was making his rounds. I was at home resting after a long day of work when suddenly my cell phone started ringing. It was the security guard. He sounded urgent, his voice sharp. "Mr. Javier, we just apprehended a man who was trying to spray paint the walls of the restaurant." I jumped out of bed immediately. "What? Are you sure?" I asked in disbelief. "Yes, sir. I saw him with my own eyes. He was about to vandalize the whole facade when I caught him. I yelled at him to stop, and he ran. I called the police right away, and they arrived in minutes. They chased him for several blocks until they got him. I took a deep breath before asking the question to which I already guessed the answer. "Who was it?" "Some guy named Dylan," he replied. I stayed silent for a few seconds. I felt a strange mix of anger, relief, and even a certain ironic satisfaction. The man who had spent weeks making threats finally tried to carry them out with a simple can of spray paint. I hung up the phone, got dressed quickly, and headed to the restaurant. When I arrived, the patrol car was still parked in front of the building. I approached the officers and confirmed what had happened. Dylan had been caught practically red-handed. He tried to run away when the guard confronted him, but he didn't manage to get very far. The police caught up to him on a nearby street, completely agitated and out of control. The security guard told me that while he was yelling at him, Dylan was shouting nonsense like, "This place is worthless. If he doesn't pay me, I'm going to ruin his business." With those words, his intention became crystal clear. They took him to the police station, and that same night I had to show up to give a statement and press charges. The extortion case already existed with all the calls and messages I had saved, and now the attempted criminal mischief was added to it. In legal terms, that practically sealed his fate. The following days were quite busy. My lawyer kept me informed of every step of the process. Dylan was facing charges for extortion, making threats, and attempted criminal mischief. Although no material damage actually occurred, the fact that he was caught in the act with the spray paint, added to all the previous evidence, left very little room for doubt. Amelia, of course, tried to contact me, not directly, because I had already blocked her everywhere. But she started doing it through mutual acquaintances. She asked them to talk to me, to intervene so I would drop the charges. She said Dylan didn't deserve to end up in jail, that he had acted out of desperation. Some acquaintances even hinted that maybe I was exaggerating and that it would be best to let the matter go, but this time I didn't cave. I had endured too many things: cheating, humiliation, blackmail, and threats. Enough was enough. Besides, it wasn't my place to forgive something that was clearly a crime. If I let all that slide, the message would be that anyone could try to intimidate me or put my work at risk without consequences. The legal process moved forward quite fast because the evidence was overwhelming. Call logs, screenshots of messages, the voicemail where they asked me for money while threatening me, and finally the attempted vandalism with police intervention. Dylan ended up being convicted. It wasn't an extremely long sentence, but it was enough for him to understand that life isn't solved by living off others, much less by resorting to intimidation. He would spend some time in jail and would also have a criminal record. As for Amelia, she was never directly charged because she didn't carry out the threats or the vandalism. However, her moral involvement in the whole matter was quite clear. I had nothing else to say to her, so I left it at that. What did surprise me was her final attempt to appeal to my emotions. One night, I received a very long message from an unknown number. It was Amelia. She wrote things like, "Don't you understand what it means for a woman to be left alone? I just wanted someone to support me. If Dylan ends up in jail, I go down with him too." She ended up begging me to reconsider everything. I read the message once, then deleted it. I didn't reply. That person is no longer a part of my life. And that was how it all ended. Today, when I look back, I feel a huge sense of relief. For months, I was trapped in a cycle of manipulation where my generosity was used as a bargaining chip and my love was mistaken for an obligation. I thought I was helping someone who really needed it, when in reality, I was only upholding the comfort of two people incapable of fending for themselves. The restaurant is still standing and stronger than ever. In fact, when the story started circulating among some customers, something curious happened. Instead of driving people away, I received even more support. Many congratulated me for not letting myself be intimidated. Some even told me that this firmness reflected the character with which I had built my business. Personally, I learned a very important lesson. It's not all about giving. You also have to know when to stop, because if you don't, you can end up empty, used, and even in danger. I understood that not everyone deserves your help and that love should never demand that you sacrifice your dignity or your principles. Dylan had to face the consequences of his own actions. As for Amelia, well, she took her own path. I, for my part, chose mine, and although everything I went through left some scars, it also left me with a lesson that is worth far more than any loss. I learned that what you build with effort, hard work, and sacrifice must also be defended with your head held high, without fear, and without giving in to blackmail or manipulation. Today I can proudly say that I came out of this whole story stronger than before. I have my restaurant, my self-respect, and above all, my peace of mind. And that peace comes from knowing I was able to permanently close a chapter that should never have started the way it did. That, in the end, was the real closure. And believe me when I say this, few things feel as good as looking back, remembering everything that happened, and realizing that you didn't fall into the trap of people who only wanted to take advantage of you. Comment. I hope this story serves as a reminder of how crucial self-respect is in any relationship. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-preservation. You have every right to protect the peace you have worked so hard to build. True kindness should never come at the cost of your own well-being. We can support people we care about, but we cannot carry their responsibilities for them. At the end of the day, we are each accountable for our own lives and the choices we make. Learning when to walk away is one of the most powerful forms of self-care. True healing begins when you reinvest that energy into yourself and your own dreams. Never let anyone make you feel guilty for valuing what you have earned through your own effort. I hope you always choose your peace of mind above all else. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.